Welcome to episode 4 of Whisky Matters, our podcast. Today I'm interviewing the wonderful, talented, legendary David Thompson from Annandale Distillery. There's a couple of interviews on there. I hope you enjoy. So fantastic. I'm here at Annandale today and I'm very, very privileged to have the owner, David Thompson, here with me. So thank you very much for giving me your time. I know you're a busy guy at the moment.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
So we're here in the newest warehouse that's been put up.
Yes, indeed.
And as we can see, it's pretty full already. You've got this distillery is steeped in history.
It is, yeah.
As you know, anybody will know that's really sort of taken a detailed look at the distillery and its history. So it was originally sort of from the 1800s.
1836 it started distilling. Project started in 1830. Local exciseman turned distiller, put together a syndicate of local business people. They funded it and it took them 6 years. And we think it's probably on the site of what was an illicit distillery anyway, because right down the distillery, you see it's nestled amongst the hills, for burn there, and perfect for illicit distillation, I would have thought. Yeah,
I can imagine. Yeah. And then from what I understand as well, the main man, Johnny Walker, got involved a little bit later down the line, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Probably about 60 years later, they took over, and they did quite a lot of work in the distillery. They built the big brick chimney for the new still house that they prepared, and they grew it in various different ways. And the reason, we don't know why they bought it, because that record has been lost, but the considered wisdom is that Annandale back in that time solely made peated smoky whiskey.
Right.
And they needed that for blending, and they were previously bringing it probably from Islay.
Right.
And that'd be quite a sweat, putting it onto a puffer or a sailing boat and bringing it in across the Clyde and offloading it. So with Annandale, of course, you could just take it down to Annan Station and straight to Comlongon, where their blending and bottling hall was. So it's very convenient for them. And they stayed here at the distillery probably till about 1918. They seemed to keep producing during World War I, but then after World War I, of course, the economy was on the skids, and there was a temperance movement here and prohibition in the United States. And the whiskey industry went through a terrible dip. And I think Johnny Walker, like many of the other companies, just had financial issues. So they eventually gave this one up. And at that time, they only had one other distillery, which was Cardew up in Speyside. But they survived, and look in that part of Diageo, and look at them.
Of course. And during the First World War, they would have struggled surely for men to work here.
Men to work here, and barley to make the whiskey. Yeah, absolutely. It must have been quite a strain. And this is a very interesting part of the world at that time, because the biggest munitions factory in the world at that time was just east of Annan, and in fact the sort of footprint of it came almost to Annan, and because there's a lot of immigrant workers working here from all around the country, there was a problem with people drinking and not coming to work. So the state took over all the breweries and all the pubs. And they were state-owned right up until the 1970s, I think it was. But for some reason, Annandale Distillery stayed just outside that envelope, which is a big surprise to me. I'd have thought the one distillery that was there, they would have definitely wanted to have under their control, but apparently not. So it's quite a nice historical note there.
Yeah, definitely. And you say that they just produce peated whiskey to start with.
That's correct.
Do you, and did you say that was because it was going into blend, and that was what was desired, or was that just down to a sort of fuel point of view, that they weren't using anything else apart from peat to dry out the?
Yeah, well, in sort of, let's say, Dumfries and Galloway, and perhaps you could say all of the south of Scotland, there were only 4 distilleries. There was Blacknock to the west, near Newton Stewart, us, and then Glentarris and Langham in the Langham area. Okay, now all of these produce peated whiskey. All of them. So the idea that, lowland whiskey is some sort of mild version of it is just nonsense. We were producing hardcore peaty whiskey at that time. And the reason is, we're amidst a bog here, frankly. And so there's plenty peat. And of course they were using peat to dry the barley after it had been germinated. So after it had been through the malting process.
In the kiln.
In the kiln, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so now you produce fantastic unpeated and peated spirit.
Well, I'd like to think so.
You do, yeah. I mean, I've been lucky enough to sample it many times. But what is the sort of split between peated and unpeated?
Well, it originally was 50-50, but there have been supply issues with peated barley in recent times. But I think we're probably getting back towards 50-50 again.
Yeah.
It's certainly our ambition to keep it that, because we can sell all the peated whiskey that we make and all the unpeated whiskey that we make. So we're going to try and keep it roughly equal, but it's not fixed.
Yeah. Okay.
We can respond to the market.
Yeah. Now I know this is going to be a question mainly for the whiskey heads out there.
Okay.
Yeah. But where do you source your barley from, and is it a particular type of barley?
No, well, I mean, to some extent, we're in the hands of other people in that, because being not a particularly big distillery, we'll have to rely on who's going to supply us. And we use a company called Crisp Malt, and their peated malt comes from the very north of Scotland. Right. And I think the unpeated malt comes probably from the central belt of Scotland.
Fantastic.
So but we have to take what they give back. The peated barley is a very tight specification. We know what we want in terms of parts per million of phenolics. So and they've shown us consistently over the years that they can deliver to that quality level. So we're very happy with them.
And what is that on the scale?
Well, we go for 45 plus or minus 5 parts per million. So we'll take it 40 to 50 roughly. Yeah. And that is quite peaty, but of course the level of peatiness that gets into the spirit is also dependent to some extent on the cut-off point used in the distillation process. So we cut quite high, so it's not hardcore peaty, because what we were really after was the idea of the peatiness integrating nicely with the other characteristics of Annandale whiskey. We call these underlying characteristics Annandale-ness. It's a clumsy name, but that's what I suppose what it means. And we wanted them to integrate nicely rather than being standing out and slapping you around the face when you drank it. We wanted it to be well integrated. So we go for complexity and balance in our whiskey, and that's what we try to achieve. So that's affected by the cut point.
Well, I think you do achieve it very, very well.
Thank you.
Now, this year you've increased production.
We have.
So obviously there's a huge demand out there for your liquid in glass and in the cask. You've also got some amazing projects going on, I understand, bringing some local history back to life with the bank, which I don't know whether you want to just give us a brief synopsis of that.
Well, we've got quite a few projects going on in the area. I'm from this area, so it's quite nice to be able to do this. I don't live here permanently, but it's nice to come home, as I would say. So we've got 3 projects going. We own the Globe Inn in Dumfries, and that's a very famous pub in Scotland because it was where Robert Burns wrote and cavorted. And so it's known as Burns's House. And we bought it not because we wanted to own a pub, but because we wanted to preserve the Burns rooms, which were pretty much as they were left back in his day. So we've done that. And beside it now in the Globe, there's a casual fine dining restaurant, and it's a pub as well. And that's doing pretty well. It needs to be busier, but we're building it up slowly. And then the other project we have is we a couple of years ago we bought Comlongon Castle, which is between Annandale and Dumfries, and that's it was built around 1500 and steeped in the history of this area when it perhaps wasn't the best place to live because of the sort of local, shall we call it, tribalism. And that area between Scotland and England was quite diffuse. It wasn't quite so clear whose side you might be on. And so we're restoring that castle at the minute. And then the final project that we have, and I do use the word final very deliberately here, let's hope it is, it was that a couple of years ago we got approached by the TSB, Trustee Savings Bank, to take over the little museum that they have in Ruthwell, which again is between Annan and Dumfries. And they wanted to pull out of it because it's not kind of core business for them, but they wanted somebody local to take it over. So that's what we've done. We worked with the community, and it's been closed for a few years now, but we're reopening it on Monday.
Fantastic.
They're having a press day on Monday, and I think it's the 1st of March. It's opening back to the public, and it's all about a guy called Henry Duncan, Dr. Henry Duncan. He was a local minister, but he was a polymath in many different ways, responsible for, he was an artist, he was a paleontologist, he was a newspaper producer, but he started this idea of a savings bank movement. Now, back in the day, so we're talking 1790, 1800,
wow.
To open a bank account, you had to have 10 quid, 10 pounds. And, for a person working on a farm, that's a lifetime's earning. So it meant that banking was out of their orbit. They just couldn't do it, and he thought this was inappropriate. And so he started the savings bank movement where people could invest sixpence. Very strict rules about what could be done, but it created wealth in the community, and it sort of got them out of the poverty trap. So they had money if things all went wrong for them and so forth. And this became the savings banks movement all around the world, and it all started in tiny little Ruthwell. And he was a great believer in education. He wanted to make sure that all the children got educated, and some people that were educated in Ruthwell rose to very high office in this area, but also in the United States as well. And he believed in getting people out of poverty through, saving, but also through education. A very, very important man in Scottish history, but very understated as things are. But we're going to change that. We're going to put him, make him important in this area, because he was also very involved in the anti-slavery movement and also in the poor law as well. So, one man with a church in Ruthwell, and in that church in Ruthwell, there's a cross. And it's one of the oldest Christian crosses in Scotland. In fact, it is the oldest Christian cross in Scotland. It's got wonderful inscriptions on it, and it's very worthwhile seeing. It's not ours, it's in the church, but we have a model of it in the Savings Bank Museum as well.
Brilliant. Well, what an amazing man, and fantastic that you're going to make sure that he's not forgotten. Yeah. And that his memory will live on, and the work that he did, and the worthwhile work that he did. Yeah,
it deserves to be remembered because it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we've taken up enough of your time, but thank you so much.
Well, thank you for coming.
We're really pleased to be part of your amazing distillery, and we hope the relationship continues long into the future.
It would be great if it would. Yeah. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Thanks, Sam.
So here we are back at Annandale Distillery, where the magic happens. So, David, I just wanted to ask you. I understand you're getting a new heat source for the stills.
Yes.
How does that work?
Right. Well, it's a really, really interesting and fabulously exciting project to be involved in. So this area of Scotland, southwest Scotland, Dumfries and Galloway, we produce a vast amount of green electricity with wind turbines. And I think in a year or so's time, we'll be producing something like 14 times more electricity than we could possibly use. So there's an issue here about transmitting it to the rest of the country. There's a lot of green electricity available. And a group of engineers and scientists at Edinburgh University came up with this fantastic but quite simple idea of using the green electricity during the night when there's very little demand to heat up what effectively is a very large night storage heater. Do you remember the old night storage heaters with bricks inside them and electrical heating coils? Yeah. We'll scale that up to a 40-foot container, right? So you're talking a big old container full of, it's not bricks either, it's a special thermal material that heats up quickly and gives up its heat quite quickly. Yeah. And so they heat it up during the night when there's this abundance of cheap electricity, frankly. It's completely carbon neutral. Heat this thing up, and it can get to about 1200 degrees Celsius. We don't need it to be that hot, but it can get that hot. And in the morning, they blast air through it. The air becomes very hot, and it goes through this heat bank and out into something that's quite like a steam boiler. So if you think of a steam boiler that's got a combustion chamber in it where you squirt gas and heat it up, and there's a jacket around it, with water in it, and that heats the water to create the steam. Well, instead of it being a flame, it's this jet of superheated air. It hits what was something like the combustion chamber, and that's how it works. Wow. So we're going to start putting that in the probably next couple of months, and it will be operational, we hope, by the end of 2024. And that should cover most of our steam generation needs for the distillery. We'll keep the gas boiler obviously on standby, and clearly it's a new system, so we're going to hope. But it seems. One of its great things is blissful simplicity. It does seem a very simple idea. A lot of control mechanisms that we'll have to get right. But I'm very excited about it. First system ever installed on a large scale anywhere, and obviously because of that, the first one in the whisky industry.
This could be absolutely instrumental for heating stills in the future for distilleries all over the country.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's a prototype. But it's very well developed. It's been tried on a smaller scale, and they wanted a local. I wanted I feel like a privately owned distillery where they could, I suppose, deal directly with the owners of the distillery to try it out. And it's really, really good that the boiler itself is made by Cochrane's of Newby, which is just outside Annan here. So they put in our original gas boiler, and so we're working with them. And another local company is doing all the control systems for it. So it's not only a great Scottish project, but it's also quite local here as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. And do you know how much that will cut your carbon footprint by, or sort of?
Well, I haven't got a precise figure, but we won't be burning natural gas.
Won't be burning gas. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is quite a clean distillery anyway, because we're very lucky that we've got a source of natural gas just at the top of the road there, so we were able to tap into that. But the price of gas shot up hugely. It's come down a bit now, but that's not the main reason for us. It's our pathway towards net zero. So we're doing quite a lot. We've as you've seen, we keep everything, all our casks on site, so there's no road miles there. We bottle on site, no road miles. That's the second project. The third project is this heat storage system. Yeah. And then the fourth project is going to be, we're going to try and install a maltings here and grow our own barley locally as well. Wow. And so everything, again, back to local, very few road miles. And if we can use also a lot of photovoltaic electricity to do all the heating and drying that we need to do of the barley, then that's going to make it a very green distillery, possibly one of the greenest distilleries in Scotland by the time we're finished.
Because the waste goes off for fertiliser or animal feed already, and that has been happening for quite some time.
Yeah, so, I mean, typically in a distillery, draft goes off for animal feed, and that's local farmer takes that. He also takes the other effluent for his slurry tank, and that gets sprayed onto the fields. So again, it's quite local. But we'd actually like to look at maybe doing something more useful with the waste, particularly if you think of what comes out of the wash still, very high in nitrogen and quite energy rich. A lot of oils in there, not oils, but it's energy rich. Protein, I meant protein. So we can maybe use that for something else. In fact, one of my friends from the University of Reading, where I still work some of the time, he's coming up to give us a hand to see what we can do with it. So we're trying every angle to be very green and carbon neutral. So,
well, I don't know where you find the time. I'm just, this is completely non-whiskey related, but I always like to ask entrepreneurs and business people, successful business people, you've got lots of things going on. You're spinning a lot of plates. You've got a lot of successful businesses. What are your sort of 3 tips for success as a professional?
Well, that's a very interesting question.
I'll put you on the spot.
Nobody's ever asked me that before. What are the 3 tips? I mean, there's some sort of fairly simple anecdotal stuff that is, like never run out of cash. It's a very important one. And never go to the bank when you need cash. Go to the bank when you don't need cash. I mean, and that's seriously though, that's quite an important thing to say to people starting a business. Make sure you get your cash sorted out, because then otherwise you will get into difficulties. And once you've established a record of being shrewd with your cash, then I think banks are always willing to talk to you.
So fantastic. So you've mentioned stay cash rich, if possible, with your new business. And last one, anything on work ethic or? Well,
I mean, as an individual, you have to work pretty damn hard. I mean, you can't say I'm only going to work. Somebody once told me this story. The secret to a successful business is only to work half days. Doesn't matter which 12 hours it is.
Yeah, I get that.
I think that's pretty fair, actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't, you just got to do what the business needs you to do. Another thing I think is quite important as well is that I'm actually a scientist by training, and I'd like to think I had an entrepreneurial spirit, but I didn't really know how to run a business. And you can then become the person that becomes the bottleneck for everything. And so getting past that and realizing that in all probability, there's probably somebody that can do every single aspect of your job better than you can. Probably not all the bits together, but you can bring people in to do things better than you can, and giving them the authority and trusting them to do it, and obviously monitoring what they do. I think that's been important, and letting go. If you don't let go, you kill yourself.
Yeah.
You really would.
That's what they say. If you hold the baby for too long, you'll end up strangling it.
Exactly. So you've got to trust in other people. So I mean, I'm here at the minute, and there's a huge board meeting going on with one of my companies, and I don't have to participate. I have somebody there. There's a lot of people there on my behalf, but one person in particular is there on my behalf, and I'll get a call if there's any issues.
So cash rich. Work at least 12 hours a day and delegate.
Yeah.
Hire people that are more, that are better than you if you can.
And elements of the different elements of the job, because there's always somebody better than you at something.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Right. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. So if you had one question that you wanted to ask our next guest, what would it be?
I mean, the question I would ask any business owner is, what are you doing to get yourself towards net zero? I mean, I think that's a question we must all answer, and we all need to move a bit faster than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be, what are you doing to move your business and even your personal life towards net zero? So,
a small plea from me: we would love you to be part of our growth as a podcast. So to help us, please subscribe and give us feedback that will help us decide the guests we have on in the future and the topics we discuss. Thank you.